Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10, and starting from now you also get entered into the Guilds of Ravnica booster box giveaway, which runs until October 5th. Hello and welcome to another episode of Friendly Friday, a weekly series where we take a look at budget-friendly, standard or modern decks, and this week we're taking a look at a Monogreen deck in standard, but unlike most Monogreen decks, we're playing 4 copies of a Rishkar's Expertise, a 6-mana sorcery that says draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, and then you also get to cast a card with convert mana cost 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost, which is a great effect after you've drawn a whole bunch of cards. And to go along with our Rishkar's Expertise, we've got a whole bunch of giant creatures. We've got 4 copies of Gigantosaurus, for example, a 5-mana 10/10. So if we cast Rishkar's Expertise with Gigantosaurus in play, we get to draw 10 cards, which is quite a deal. So let's take a look at the entire deck list here, starting out with our 1-drops, where we have 4 copies of Adventurous Impulse, a 1-mana sorcery that lets us take a look at the top 3 cards of our library. We can reveal a creature or land and put it into our hand. So in the early game we can find creatures and lands, and in the late game we can find our giant creatures. Then of course we've got 4 copies of Llanowar Elves as a great mana creature, 1 mana for a 1/1 that taps to add green mana to our mana pool, so it can allow for some very explosive starts. We also have 2 copies of Druid of the Cowl as another mana creature, 2 mana for a 1/3 that taps to add green, and 4 copies of Elfhame Druid, a 2 mana 0/2 that taps to add green and can also tap to add double green if we're casting a kicked spell, and one of those kicker spells is Grow from the Ashes, 3 mana for a sorcery that lets us search up a basic land to put on the battlefield untapped, and if we pay the kicker cost of 2 additional generic mana, then we can search up 2 basic lands to put on the battlefield untapped. So if we play a turn 2 Elfhame Druid, we can play a kicked Grow from the Ashes on turn 3, which will give us a ton of mana. So that's the early game in the deck. We're just trying to develop our mana so we can cast our giant creatures ahead of schedule. We also have 4 copies of Steel Leaf Champion, just triple green for a 5/4 that can be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, so that's one of the payoff cards for being a mono-green deck. We also have 2 copies of Territorial Allosaurus, 4 mana for a 5/5, also has kicker for 2 and a green, and if we paid the kicker cost, then when the Allosaurus enters the battlefield we get to fight an opposing creature, and of course also benefits from the Elfhame Druid's ability to tap to add double green for kicker cards. Then we get to our 5-drops, where we have 3 copies of Verdurous Gearhulk, 5 mana for a 4/4 artifact creature with trample, and when the Gearhulk enters the battlefield we can distribute 4 +1/+1 counters among creatures we control, so we could just put all the counters on the Gearhulk and make an 8/8, which synergizes nicely with the Expertise, or we can spread them out a little more to play around removal spells. Then we've got our 4 copies of Gigantosaurus, another payoff card for being a mono-green deck, and our 4 copies of Rishkar's Expertise, which we're hoping to combine with a Gigantosaurus or at least a Verdurous Gearhulk. And then last but not least, 2 copies of Pelakka Wurm, 7 mana for a 7/7 worm with trample, and when Pelakka Wurm enters the battlefield we gain 7 life, and when Pelakka Wurm dies we get to draw a card, so it helps us gain a valuable amount of life against the more aggressive decks, so we don't risk getting burnt out. Then our mana base is very straightforward, total of 23 lands, 19 basic forests, and 4 Hashep Oasis, which we can sacrifice to make one of our creatures bigger until end of turn, and we can get away with only 23 lands because of the 4 Adventurous Impulse and all the mana creatures, and helps us not flood out in the late game. Then taking a look at our sideboard, we've got 2 copies of Nature's Way for when we need some more creature removal, 2 copies of Sorcerous Spyglass to shut down planeswalkers and other annoying things, 3 copies of Thrashing Brontodon to deal with artifacts and enchantments, 2 Lifecrafter's Bestiary against control decks to help us draw more cards when they just kill all our creatures one by one. We've got 2 copies of Blanchwood Armor, which is kind of a package alongside Vine Mare. So Blanchwood Armor giving our creature +1/+1 for each forest we control, and Vine Mare being a 4 mana 5/3 creature with hexproof that can be blocked by black creatures, so shines against the removal heavy decks, and if you can slap a Blanchwood Armor onto a Vine Mare, that's also an easy way to win the game. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand seems fine. Some mana acceleration, some big creatures, and this hand could definitely do with Rishkar's Expertise. Turn on island, no play. Druid of the Cowl not as good as Elfhame Druid would have been here, since we can't play kicked Grow from the Ashes. Turn to Diamond Mare, naming blue. Alright. Well, we've got a lot of copies of Gigantosaurus, that's for sure. I think we cast a Grow from the Ashes here, make sure we can cast our Gigantosaurus next turn. Since if we miss on a land, that would be unfortunate. So we know what we're doing the next couple of turns. And a Tempest Djinn, alright. Opponent's gonna fly over in the air. We'll have to do it on the ground. So 2 monocolor decks battling it out. And a Chart of course before attacking. Discards a Wall of Mist, alright. And the Tempest Djinn stays back. And here we could go double Steel Leaf Champion instead of playing another Gigantosaurus. We'll attack first. Maybe they have an unsummon they want to use on Gigantosaurus, we'll see. Chum block with Vine Mare, it's fine. I think going double Steel Leaf might be better in the face of potential bounce spells. It's also a bit more mana efficient. And Disperse bounces Gigantosaurus. Ooh, there's a Rishkar's Expertise. So we can attack for 10. And then cast Expertise, which will also put Gigantosaurus in play. And will help us find even more goodies. I guess this is kind of weak to a Spell Pierce, but I think it's worth it. And let's put this bad boy into play. And then we can still play a land for the turn. And our opponent packs it in. Alright, so against a mono blue flyer deck, I think our main game plan is pretty solid. Just ramp into big creatures and try and beat them down before they kill us in the air. Blanchwood Armor doesn't seem great unless we combine it with Vine Mare. Otherwise our creature just gets bounced. But I don't think Vine Mare's gonna be great here. I think our other options are better. And Brontodon could potentially destroy an enchantment. But I think we're just fine as is. Maybe we want to Nature Sway, could see that. And then what do we cut for it? I think I'll cut to Grow from the Ashes. I think the life gain from Pelakka Wurm is still going to be useful. Hopefully they don't have too many copies of Essence Scatter. So yeah, let's try this. And this sounds okay. The 2 Adventurous Impulse can help us find more big creatures. And we've got a good start with Llanowar Elves and Druid of the Cowl. So let's play turn 1 Elf. And then next turn we could go Grow from the Ashes into Adventurous Impulse, make use of that untapped land we get. Or we could play Druid of the Cowl plus an Impulse. We'll see. Alright, so we could also play turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion. It's also pretty tempting, but I also like developing our mana first. So this is a tricky turn if our opponent has an Essence Scatter or Syncopate. Playing the Steel Leaf would not be great, but then again, we put Steel Leaf Champion in our deck to play it on turn 2, so I think we'll go for it anyway. And I would rather have them Essence Scatter or Steel Leaf than something more expensive. Alright, so we traded for Essence Scatter. So had we gone Grow from the Ashes that turn, might have been better. Instead another Steel Leaf. I think we do want to develop our mana now, and don't want the Steel Leaf to get countered and us to be stuck on 2 lands and a Llanowar Elves. So let's play Grow from the Ashes. And then we can still Impulse and potentially find a land. Opponent lets it resolve, find a Llanowar Elves as the only hit, double Nature Sway as well. It's too bad. Would have preferred a land here so we could have played land and still played Impulse. But Elf is better than nothing. So your opponent's stuck on 2 here, there's a land. We've got 5 mana to work with, so let's lead with the Druid of the Cowl. And then we can still play a Steel Leaf Champion, but hopefully they just counter this. If they don't, alright, we'll give them a Steel Leaf Champion to counter, I think. And then next turn we can Impulse and look for more big green creatures. And maybe in the meantime we can start attacking with our mana creatures as well. Triple Island, opponent says go, Verdurous Gearhulk to draw. So I think we want to Impulse. Find Steel Leaf Champion. So I think we'll test the waters again with Steel Leaf. Alright, triple Essence Scatter. At least we traded them all for Steel Leaf Champions and not Gigantosauruses. So let's run out another Llanowar Elves and attack for 1. Alright, so hopefully this Gearhulk sticks, their opponent taps out and we get to Expertise. We'll see. At some point they're gonna have to tap out. Opponent with land 4 into Vine Mare, so that's gonna stop our attacks with Llanowar Elves. I mean, yeah, let's just run out to Gearhulk and hope they don't have all 4 copies of Acid Scatter. Can definitely pay for Syncopate here. Alright, that worked. So if we put all the counters on the Gearhulk, then if they just have a bounce spell, that would be unfortunate. So instead, I think we go 2 and 2 on the Llanowar Elves, so they can attack past the Vine Mare. Makes sense to me. And then drawing 4 with the expertise is still fine. So our opponent takes 6. And now if our opponent taps out, we get to draw 4 more cards. And there's a Tempest Djinn, which is a 5/4. Could have been a reason to maybe put 3 counters on one Llanowar Elves instead of 2 and 2. Alright, let's try this. Alright, opponent brought in the gate. Alright, let's get in there with the Gearhulk, I suppose. Opponent only 2 cards left. And next turn we can maybe use Hashep Oasis on a Llanowar Elf. We'll see. Second Tempest Djinn is definitely an issue. And there's a land, so now every land we draw is going to be a very bad draw. Could also Hashep Oasis on Gearhulk, but then they can just double block with Tempest Djinns. But the upside of Hashep Oasis on Gearhulk is that if they do have a bounce spell, we still get some value from the Enter a Battlefield ability. While if they bounce an elf, then we kind of lose those counters as well. I think we'll do it on an elf anyway. The elf isn't really doing much here. And then just attack with elf and Gearhulk. I'm fine trading Gearhulk for Djinn. Might also see a chum block from the Vine Mare. Alright, let's say go. But they're almost out of Acid Scatters now. So if we can find Gigantosaurus that can take over the game, another Rishkar's expertise would be nice. If we had access to Carnage Tyrants in our sideboard, we definitely would have brought them in, but that one went a bit out of our budget. Divination, alright, opponent refueling, so now would be a good time to find Gigantosaurus, for example, since this is the first turn that our opponent has tapped out, and Tempest Djinn is going to start attacking. Alright, so this is the window. And Adventurous Impulse is going to be a redraw. And that's too bad. Rishkar's expertise and 2 lands. At least it's a Hashep Oasis. Where do we use the Hashep Oasis? Is it going to be Llanowar Elves again? Can we use Hashep Oasis on Gearhulk and attack with everyone? Let's see. Yeah, I suppose we can just go for it here. So let's send everyone and find out if we got there or if your opponent can survive. I guess if they put the Tempest Djinn in front of the Gearhulk and block a 3/3, then they would only take 3, 4, 5, they would take 8. But of course they would lose a Tempest Djinn without any value, so that's a good exchange for us. And it would go pretty low. So this attack seems pretty decent. Forces our opponent into an awkward spot. Opponent's gonna double block the Gearhulk. I guess that also works. Our opponent with an induced amnesia. Alright. So they get to refresh their hand. And what's it gonna be? Psychic Corrosion. Alright, so that's their combo. Amnesia plus Corrosion. But that's not gonna do it here. And we got the GGs from our opponent, and that's gonna do it. Awesome, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. And this hand's a little slow, but it does have all the important cards we need. Some big creatures, Rishkar's expertise, and a little bit of acceleration, just not in creature form. But maybe the impulse can help. So I think this is a keep, but we could fall behind if we don't find some cheap acceleration here. Alright, find the Llanowar Elves seems better than Hashep Oasis, even though we could use both. If they kill the elves, then we wish we had taken the Hashep Oasis, I guess. Opponent with turn 1 Mountain. Pick up Hashep Oasis anyways. So next turn we can play Grow from the Ashes regardless. And then a turn 4 Verdurous Gearhulk. And Drover of the Mighty, so up against maybe a dinosaur deck. Alright, let's try and go bigger than the dinosaurs. I think we'll grow first. And then we can still potentially attack with our Llanowar Elves, since now we can cast Impulse with our untapped forest. And find either a land or a Steel Leaf champion. I think we actually prefer land here, since a Steel Leaf doesn't do much for us. And then we can attack with our Llanowar Elves, since I'm okay trading it given that we have our 5th land now. Although I would prefer it to survive, but I don't think our opponent's gonna offer a trade anyways. And you never know that 1 damage could matter. So next turn we're casting Gearhulk, opponent on Naya colors, and the Ranging Raptors, and now they can get in for 3 with the Drover. So the 1 card that could be an issue is something like an Abrade, since then they could kill the Gearhulk if we go all in on it. But I think we have to kind of go all in here given the expertise. And then just hope they can't kill the Gearhulk. And even if they do, we're not too far away from Pelakka Wurm, so Abrade, Exil's Binding, Cast Out. Those are the answers our opponent could have. Unclaimed Territory, naming dinosaurs, my guess. Opponent's got 5 mana, they could play Regisaur Alpha. No attacks. Alright, well, the problem with playing Rishkar's expertise right now is that our opponent could, for example, play a Cast Out in response, and then we only get to draw 1 card. So we probably want to attack first. And if something happens to the Gearhulk, we just play Pelakka Wurm. Opponent could also double block and then use a burn spell to finish off Gearhulk. But we're kind of in a tough spot. If it's Seal Away, then of course we could have cast the expertise, but no, it's a Cast Out, so good thing we attacked first. So now we'll just play Pelakka Wurm. Won't net us 8 cards, but still 7 with a expertise. So that seems like the way to go. And yeah, hope they don't have a second Cast Out, since then we're going to be in trouble. But if they just play a random dinosaur, then expertise should pull us pretty far ahead. And it's going to be a Raging Swordtooth, killing the Llanowar Elves and enabling Enrage on the Raptors. That's okay, got our value from our Elf already, can still cast expertise, so we're not too upset. And if we can find a Gearhulk with the expertise, we can also make our Worm even larger, so it can survive the double block. Another Pelakka Wurm's also not bad, but... And we did find a Gearhulk as well as Gigantosaurus. So if we put the Gearhulk in play, we could put 1 or 2 counters on Pelakka Wurm and have it be able to survive. That seems worth it. So now the question is, how many counters do we put on the Worm? 1 counter is technically enough. Don't think we need to get too greedy here. We could of course make a 11-11 Pelakka Wurm, make our next expertise even better. But hedging our bet seems fine here. Get in for 8. And then we can still even cast an Adventurous Impulse. So now we've got a lot of action to work with. And should be able to win in a couple of turns. And a nice thing about expertise, of course, is that it lets us cast a 5-drop for free. And if that 5-drop is Gigantosaurus, then you can kind of see how that scales nicely, since that also makes our next expertise better. Hour of Promise, alright. Opponents ramping. Those zombie tokens can definitely help them with blocking duty. And it also explains the Shafat Dunes, since Dinosaur is not typically known to be a go-wide deck. So we could see cards like Zakama or Gishath make an appearance. So I want to make sure to keep enough toughness on defense. Casting another expertise is probably fine here. Could also maybe use Hashep Oasis, but if we can draw into another Gearhulk, then that does a similar thing. And we did find another Gearhulk. So opponent has quite a bit of power now, so I don't think we can actually make any of our attackers survive our opponent's blocks. I think just putting a Gigantosaurus in play is going to be fine here. And then we'll attack with both and see how our opponent wants to block. Attack with everyone. And trading off our Gearhulk while we can is also good in case they do have Zakama, since that can destroy artifacts. So we want to just deal all the damage on the Swordtooth here so we don't enable Enrage on the Raptors. And our opponent might have a burn spell to finish off Pelakka Wurm, we'll see. Alright, so all 7 damage there. And then trample over. Alright, so opponent is down to 7. And we still get to play some mana creatures here. I guess Druid of the Cowl is fine. And then we'll have to discard to hand size, get rid of a few lands and mana creatures. Alright, let's see what big finish is for our opponent. We've got double Hashep Oasis as well as Gearhulk to potentially make some of our creatures bigger. And there's Gishath, which can't actually attack into our Gigantosaurus. Nope, they're gonna attack with everyone. Well, we're definitely blocking Gishath here. And then I think we're fine taking 5. Alright, so maybe a desperation attack here. So now we get to untap and just kill our opponent by attacking. Alright, so we got game 1 against Naya Ramp Dinosaurs, which I don't think we have to change much in this matchup since our main game plan seems to line up pretty well. So I think we just keep the deck as is. Can't keep a no-lander. This hand's okay. And hoping to keep a land on top, instead it's an Adventurous Impulse. I think we bottomed that since the upside of finding a land would be pretty high. Even though Impulse can perhaps find a land, but we want to go turn 1 Elf. And then turn 2 we can play Elfhame Druid. And then maybe a kick Grow from the Ashes if we hit our land drops. Alright, no land for now. Let's just play Llanowar Elves. Opponent with a turn 2 Drover. And did not find a land, but I think we're kind of priced into casting the Impulse so we can find a land and still play Elfhame Druid. Alright, luckily didn't miss. And the next turn we can play Kick Grow from the Ashes. Or we can, if we find a land, just play Gigantosaurus. And there's a Raging Raptors. Opponent can attack for 3. They're gonna stay on defense instead. And we did find a land, alright, so this opens up a new line of play, which is Kick Grow from the Ashes into Steelleaf Champion. Make use of those untapped lands, seems like a good one. Alright, so we've got all the mana we need, so now we are just looking for a Rishkar's expertise to bury our opponent in card advantage. But a Gigantosaurus, if it goes unanswered, will also do a good job of holding the fort. Steelleaf Champion doesn't have any great attacks here since our opponent can easily double block. Opponent with an Hour of Promise, but no deserts in play, so won't get them any zombies. But it will let them ramp. So now we can attack with Steelleaf, opponent can block, and then we can play Gigantosaurus. And then even if our opponent did have a Gishath, they won't have a clean attack, so if they have removal for Gigantosaurus, they'll have to spend their next turn getting rid of Gigantosaurus before they can deploy Gishath, which buys us some time. And we'll add another Llanowar Elves. I guess maybe playing the other elf is not necessary in the face of a potential Raging Swordtooth. It's going to be a Ripjaw Raptor instead. And another Drover. Opponent's got 2 cards left. And a Verdurous Gearhulk is quite a draw here. Our opponent is likely to just chumblock Gigantosaurus with the Raging Raptors anyway. So maybe putting even more counters on it is not the way to go. So I guess we can put all 4 on Steelleaf Champion. Yeah, it seems okay. And then we can attack with our 2 large creatures here and see what our opponent wants to do about it. And then we can still play another Steelleaf second main. Opponent does indeed just chump block, and then chump blocks there as well. So they get to draw a card, get a land, but we don't lose any of our creatures. I think that's okay. And then we should have enough blockers back to be able to double block a Gishath if that attacks. Alright, so we've got all our cards on the table. Even if our opponent has the white Sun's Avatar, which destroys all non-dinosaur creatures, we would keep our Gigantosaurus. Instead another Ripjaw Raptor. And a Regisaur Alpha. Alright. So our best draw by far would be a Rishkar's Expertise. Opponent attacking here is pretty aggressive when we have those 2 blockers back. And our opponent realizes they don't have any great attacks and they pack it in. So managed to beat Naya Dinosaurs onto the next one. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand seems fine. Elfhame Druid into Kick Grow from the Ashes, hopefully. So this Impulse might want to find a land, and it's our only choice. And even if the Druid dies, we have a Steel Leaf Champion on 3. Opponent with an end of turn opt. Let's see what we're up against. Mono blue so far, and a Prophetic Prism, so an artifact based deck. Alright. I think a Kicked Grow from the Ashes is better than playing the Steel Leaf here, since that'll unlock quite a bit of mana. We even get to play another Elfhame Druid this turn. And then we could have a turn 4 Pelakka Wurm. Seems nice. Inspiring Statuary, so our opponent also doing some ramping. And another Elfhame Druid, so let's get this party started. And of course, Rishkar's Expertise, pretty high up on our list of cards we want to draw. But just any big creature here will do. It's going to be a Baral's Expertise, bouncing all our creatures and letting them put another Statuary into play. Alright, that was a good tempo play. But we've got 6 lands in play, so we can still pretty easily recast our spells. Adventurous Impulse. Can actually play the Pelakka Wurm here, but I guess we'll start with an Impulse. And that finds 2 Gearhulks. So we could go Steel Leaf plus Elfhame Druid, or we could play Gearhulk by itself. I kind of like Steel Leaf plus Elfhame Druid. It gives us a few more options for next turn. Can potentially replay Pelakka Wurm, can play Gearhulk. We'll see. And Steel Leaf Champion pretty decent if our opponent starts making some Thopter tokens with their Sai Master Thopterist. Opponent appears to be on the Mono Blue Storm deck here. And it's going to be Reverse Engineer, letting them draw 3 cards. And another Statuary. Alright. Found a land, so got 8 mana at our disposal. So we could play Pelakka Wurm, we could play Gearhulk. So the upside of Gearhulk is that we get to add 4 power to the board for this turn. But I think Pelakka Wurm's probably better, so we'll just hit for 5. And then next turn we can drop the Gearhulk. It's gonna be Aetherflux Reservoir, so our opponent can start gaining some life. And there's Ornithopter. Opponent could go for a Paradoxical Outcome and gain a whole bunch of life. Depends how many cheap cards they can replay. And yep, there's the outcome, picking up a whole bunch of artifacts, so opponent's got a pretty stocked hand here. Replays Ornithopter, up to 26. So in this matchup, Thrashing Brontodon's for sure coming in. Don't know if there's anything else we want to add. So we'll see if we're in trouble here. Allosaurus can get rid of Ornithopter, doesn't seem very relevant, since Ornithopter can't really do much here anyway. Our opponent could potentially cast a 4 mana spell here, so it could be a Commit Memory, could be a counter spell. But playing a Verdurous Gearhulk seems relatively safe. And then we probably don't want to put all the counters on the same creature here. Metallic Rebuke, well, that's an easy pay 3 mana. And then I guess now we can kind of choose where we put the counters. I suppose we just put them all on the Steel Leaf Champion, since that one's cheaper to replay and can dodge chump blockers better. And the 7 life we gain from the Enter the Battlefield from Pelakka Wurm, not too relevant in this matchup, so putting counters on Pelakka Wurm with the reasoning that if our opponent bounces it, we get some value, doesn't seem to really make a whole lot of sense. So our opponent's taking 16 down to 11, and then we have to hope that we don't die next turn, but that's definitely possible. Another Baral's Expertise, for example, would also set us back by quite a bit. And there's Sai, which our Steel Leaf Champion can ignore. So our opponent's got 5 cards left. I think one of them at least is an Inspiring Statuary. It's going to be another Paradoxical Outcome. So our opponent went through half their deck. Replays Ornithopter to gain some more life, make a Thopter. And a Renegade map. but now they're tapped out of blue mana. Alright, so next turn could be bad, but this turn we get to deal quite a bit of damage. And Hashep Oasis isn't bad, so we could play Kicked Allosaurus to kill Sai. It's probably a good place to start, and we can use our Elfhame Druid to make it cheaper. And then we won't be able to use the Hashep Oasis this turn, but it's still fine. So we'll attack with everyone and try to inflict some damage. Opponent takes it, falls to 13, and we get to replay Elfhame Druid. Alright, let's see what happens. So our opponent went through 2 copies of Paradoxical Outcome. There's another Sai. So our opponent just looking to gain enough life to kill us in one shot with Aetherflux Reservoir here. And with all those outcomes, they can definitely see a lot of cards. But they went through 2 copies already, so hopefully they didn't find a third one. It looks like they did. Picks up 4 cards. And if they can play a whole bunch of Ornithopters here, we could be dead. It's gonna be an opt. Opponent up to 35. Storm count is getting pretty high here. Mox Amber, that's a good one too. So Storm count 7. So opponent needs 2 more spells here to win the game. And Renegade Map's gonna be the first one. Opponent up to 50, they still can't pay 50 life, otherwise they would die. And there's an opt, and that's gonna do it. Alright, it's too bad. So we got to enact most of our game plan, just didn't have the Rishkar's expertise to really get ahead on cards. So how do we approach this matchup? Brontodon's definitely coming in. I think that's about it. Could consider Vine Mare, but opponent can just chum block it with Thopter tokens. So 3 Brontodons coming in, what do we take out? Can probably just got some number of Grow from the Ashes. Gigantosaurus not the best against bounce spells and Thopter tokens as blockers. So maybe we just shave 1 copy and try this. So this is a matchup where we're better off with a turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion than we are with a turn 4 Gigantosaurus. Well, no turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion, but a turn 3 Steel Leaf Champion. I think we'll have to keep. We even have a Brontodon to interact. Would have loved the Llanowar Elves, of course, but can't get it every time. There's an Ornithopter. So opponent wants to represent Metallic Rebuke. So that's not what we wanted to see. Probably just have to give them the Steel Leaf Champion. Well, they didn't have it. Alright, so maybe they just bluffed a Metallic Rebuke. And there's a Statuary, so that one we want to blow up with the Brontodon as soon as possible. Alright, so we can get in for 5. And then play Brontodon and get rid of Statuary. Don't know the exact timing on when we should sacrifice, if we should sacrifice right away, so the opponent doesn't get any extra mana. Sacrificing right away also plays around Paradoxical Outcome, picking up the Statuary again. So I think we just do it right away here. Not take any risks, hope they don't have a second copy. And keep applying pressure with our Steel Leaf Champion. And next turn we can drop Verdurous Gearhulk. There's a Mox Amber into Ornithopter. So this looks like a Paradoxical Outcome turn. But the good thing about Steel Leaf is their opponent can't chum block with Ornithopter and then pick it up with Paradoxical Outcome, which they would be able to do against a normal creature. Alright, so I think we're just playing Gearhulk, putting counters on Steel Leaf here. Barl's expertise is going to be bad no matter what we play. And this pushes the most damage. Alright, so we just had a pretty normal draw here. Turn 3 Steel Leaf, turn 4 Brontodon plus sack, turn 5 Gearhulk. Nothing fancy. Let's see if that's good enough, or if our opponent can find a Barl's expertise here. Land 5 into Aetherflux Reservoir, alright. Into Opts. Another Ornithopter. Into Mox Amber up to 15, but they'll have to be on chum block duty here. So we can use Hashep Oasis to pump our Steel Leaf Champion, but we can't sack both Hashep Oasis. So is that even worth it here? So by sacrificing Hashep Oasis we can get 12 damage in, which isn't quite enough. So I don't think that's worth it. Probably just better off playing Allosaurus. So let's attack with both. By not using Hashep Oasis, we're not forcing the opponent to chum block our Gearhulk necessarily. So that's the downside of this play. Our opponent's gonna double block Gearhulk regardless. So we get 9 damage in. Alright, so opponent down to 6. We can't play kicked Allosaurus, so maybe it's better to just play double Llanowar Elves here. Since our opponent would be able to chum block Allosaurus anyway with the Ornithopter, which might as well just hold on to it and maybe use a kicker on a Sai. And there's Inspiring Statuary, so now our opponent gets access to quite a bit of mana. But they only have 3 cards left. And it's gonna be Outcome, alright. Picking up 2 0 mana cards. So they will be able to gain a whole bunch of life. And then the question is, did they find something else they can play? They've got 5 mana thanks to Statuary, so they could cast an Expertise. And it looks instead like they found another Outcome. And they can replay some 0 mana cards. Opponent up to 34 here. That's quite a turn. And something else. Sai. Alright, so we'll be able to kill Sai at least. But opponent definitely gains more life than we would have liked. So we can Expertise, drawing 9 cards. Is that better than killing Sai? I think killing Sai is actually safer here. Since that way your opponent can generate extra mana with all those Thopter tokens. And also gets rid of a blocker for whatever that's worth. So let's play this with Kicker. And we also get to attack with Llanowar Elves. And hopefully get our opponent low enough where they won't be able to deal 50 to us next turn. Alright, so our opponent's got 4 cards. They do have a second Sai. Our opponent already cast 3 copies of Paradoxical Outcome. So they're not very likely to have the 4th one here, which is going to make it less likely that the opponent can completely go off. They could have a Commit Memory and then cast Memory to draw a fresh hand, I suppose. And there's the Expertise finally. It's gonna set us back quite a bit. And Prophetic Prism, but our opponent only has 1 card left in hand, now 2 I guess. So we might be able to get there. Opponent could have a Metallic Rebuke as one of their cards. So playing a kicked Allosaurus would be pretty bad into Metallic Rebuke, even though killing Sai would be nice. I think we're better off going with some cheaper creatures here. So we could go Steelleaf Champion into Gearhulk, or we could go Gearhulk into Steelleaf Champion. If we play the Gearhulk first to play around Metallic Rebuke, we don't get to put the counters on Steelleaf Champion, which is the best recipient of +1/+1 counters. I guess it's still fine to play Gearhulk first. Hits a little harder, and once we kill Sai with Allosaurus, then opponent has less toughness to work with. Opponent is going to Rebuke, so we'll pay for it. Opponent just using it as a tempo play. So I'll put all the counters here. Opponent's got 1 card left. Let's hope it's not a good one. They can, of course, sack some artifacts to Sai to draw more cards, but that's also going to reduce the amount of artifacts they can work with. Prophetic Prism, that's a redraw. And now they can sack 2 Prisms with Sai and not lose too much ground. Instead, our opponent just sacrifices some Thopter tokens. Sacrifices both Prisms. And what is this? And another Baral's Expertise, also bouncing their own stuff. So they can up their storm count. But hopefully not high enough where they can kill us. So our opponent up to 45. Sacrifices some more artifacts with Sai and passes the turn. So now is probably a good time to play Kicked Allosaurus. Get rid of Sai before they get too much more value out of it. Suppose we could have also played Adventurous Impulse first in case we find a Thrashing Brontodon, for example, since taking out the artifacts can also help. Let's take a forest. Say go. Alright, so our opponent's got 3 cards, but they're at 45, so if they can cast a bunch of spells in a row, we could be dead. They went through 3 Paradoxical Outcomes and 2 Baral's Expertises already. And it's going to be River's Rebuke instead, bouncing our stuff. Alright, but we're not dead, so that's the good news. We can go double Steel Leaf, double Llanowar Elves. Is that the best we can do? I think so. They've got the Essence Scatter to counter it, opponent up to 47. Let's play some Llanowar Elves. Opponent's gonna Field of Ruin. Let's float a Colorless, I guess. Get a Forest. And now we won't have to play a life for the second elf. Alright, let's say go. So pretty much boils down to how well our opponent can top deck. Inventor's Fair can find them an artifact. Can they find something that kills us here is a question. They could find another Reservoir. Instead they get a Prophetic Prism for the redraw. They need 2 spells here, since one will put them to 50, which is not good enough. And our opponent just passes a turn. Alright, let's try and deal some damage here. So how much mana are we working with? 10 mana, so we can cast double Gearhulk if we want to. It's probably worth it. Let's start with the first one. And the question is, do we go all in on Steel Leaf Champion, or do we hedge our bets? Maybe put some counters on Llanowar Elves, but I guess our opponent tapped out of blue mana, so they can't play any bounce spells here, so I guess just putting everything on Steel Leaf is fine. I guess we can go 1-on-1 on the Llanowar Elves as well, so they can attack past the Ornithopter. Seems fine. The upside of putting more counters on Steel Leaf is that we make our expertise better. So hopefully this puts our opponent low enough where they can't combo us out with the Reservoir. And we're now firmly ahead on board. They can still Field of Ruin the other Hashep Oasis, and that's what they do. Got plenty of forests left in our deck. And now it's finally time to cast our Rishkar's Expertise, but our opponent's just gonna pack it in. Oof, that was a close one. It looked very good at the start, but our opponent almost came back, and they were a few life points short of killing us. So, do we want to reconsider anything? I think we're fine. Gigantosaurus would not have been great in that game. Suppose Vine Mare has the upside of not being able to get bounced by their Baral's Expertise, still gets bounced by the River's Rebuke, and they can still chum block with Thopter tokens. So I think we still keep the same configuration here. And we were mostly just spending mana recasting all our creatures since the opponent kept bouncing them. So something like Bestiary doesn't seem necessary, since their opponent's not actually countering our creatures for the most part, or just bouncing them, so drawing more cards doesn't necessarily help. Can't really keep a no-lander. Alright, this one seems okay. And bottom the land. So we've got turn 1 Impulse, turn 2 Druid, turn 3 Brontodon plus Sacrifice. And we'll take a Gearhulk. In the previous game we did have a pretty key Brontodon to blow up their first statuary, which potentially saved us. Druid resolves. And there's a statuary which we're gonna take care of as soon as possible here. Although our opponent does only have 1 artifact in play, so maybe we can keep our Brontodon in play for a turn or 2. That seems like a pretty risky proposition. And just get rid of it. Even if they have a second one, it's an artifact we're getting rid of, so still relevant. There's Ornithopter, Mox Amber, and is Outcome their last card? It is. Alright, so our opponent's got 4 cards now. So I think we're playing a 5 mana creature this turn. Question is which one? I guess playing an 8/8 Gearhulk is probably better than just playing a Gigantosaurus here, because of the trample. Otherwise our opponent could just chum block with like an Ornithopter, cast another Paradoxical Outcome, and we wouldn't really make any forward progress. So our opponent's got 5 mana, and they're gonna pass it back. Alright, so probably just wanna attack with our Gearhulk, and then we can either play Gigantosaurus, can play Kick Grow from the Ashes into double Llanowar Elves. We've got a few options, but let's start by attacking. Alright, looks like they have something, Field of Ruin, in our beginning of combat, so we didn't get to make use of the extra mana, I suppose. And I think we're fine if they counter this Kick Grow from the Ashes. And that's what they do. We'll pass it back. Alright, so their opponent not working with a ton of cards. We know one of them is Ornithopter. And their opponent's going to pack it in. They drew a few too many blanks, and the 8/8 Gearhulk was going to make short work of them. Alright, so I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay. And as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached, we will release an additional weekly series. So if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.